Okay, so we're in 1 Kings and we're doing 16 to 22. We just did 12 to 15. So let's get started. Okay, let me put my glasses on. And okay, so Baasha reigns over Israel. But then Baasha did evil, and the Lord said he would destroy him just like he destroyed the others. So that goes pretty quickly. Elah reigns over Israel, and the same thing happened with Elah. His drunk commander, Zimri, conspired against him and killed him, and all the house of Baasha was killed too. Okay, so that was all that. All right, so now the conspiracy and death of Zimri. Wait a minute, that's Omri, isn't it? So where's the Zimri? Oh, there it is, the bottom. Zimri himself reigned for 7 days. When it was found out that Zimri had killed a king and took his place, the Philistines came and burned down the king's house, and Zimri died, and all is written in the book of Chronicles, where all the king stuff is. Omri reigns over the house of Israel and builds Samaria, and Omri was just like them. Okay. What we have here? Okay. Key event. Jezebel leads Israel astray. Okay. So I know I haven't focused much on the Jeff Cavins key events, but what I'm going to do is after the 30 days, I'm going to work on that to help me memorize. Because my memory's not so good, so this is helping me. So as I go forward reading the supplemental books, I will have a good solid foundation. So, okay. Ahab reigns over Israel and does evil. Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all before him. Oh, this story is something. He took his wife Jezebel and served Baal and worshipped him. And he erected an altar and built the house of Baal in Samaria. This provoked anger in the Lord. And also the kings of Israel. This had all been prophesied by Joshua a few books ago, if you remember. Okay, 17. Elijah's prophecy of a drought. The Lord told Elijah there would be no dew or rain, and there would be a drought these years, except by my word. And the Lord told him to go and hide himself by a brook and drink from the brook. And he commanded the ravens to feed him there and instructed him. So this is the book with all the prophets, okay? And he commanded the ravens to feed him there and instructed him to drink from the brook. So the raven brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening. Soon thereafter, the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. And that was Elijah's prophecy. But he was fed, and you're going to see the prophets are taken care of. Zarephath, the Lord tells Elijah to go and meet a widow who will feed him. So he went and found her. But she was preparing her last bit of food for her and her son, and they were going to die. But the Lord told Elijah to tell her, fear not, and keep making food from a jar, and it would not go empty until the drought was over. And that's what happened. Okay, Elijah revives the widow's son. Okay, and soon thereafter, the son of the widow became ill, and he died. And the widow blamed him. So, isn't that funny? He saved her life and she blamed him. Isn't that the way? So he picked up the child and he prayed to God, please, God, So the Lord listened. He asked him to bring him back to life. So the Lord listened, and the soul of the child came back, and he was revived. Here he had died, and he brought him back. Who does that sound like, right? Jesus. So Elijah delivered him to his mother, and the widow said, "Now I know you're from the man of God, and the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth." They have a strange way of saying things back then, don't they? Elijah's message to Ahab. After many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the third year of I guess, the third year of the drought. And the Lord said, "Go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." By then the famine was severe in Samaria. Meanwhile, King Ahab had called Obadiah to go out and look for water. Now, Obadiah had taken over 100 prophets. Sorry, my hand is shaky. So he had taken over 100 prophets and hid them in a cave and fed them every day with bread and water that he could find to hide them from King Ahab's wife, Jezebel. Remember, they built the altars to Baal. Well, apparently she was throwing out all of the Lord's prophets out of the land. Okay, so wait a minute. So as Obadiah goes and looking for water, she comes upon Elijah, and she rejoices, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm seeing you." And he says, "Go tell your Lord Elijah is here," meaning, King Ahab. And she said, "I can't do that. I told him that you were nowhere to be found. He's been looking for you to come and kill you." And there was some back and forth, and finally she does it. And it comes, and he sees him. Ahab comes, and he says, "Oh, isn't that the worst? Oh, the worst troublemaker in Israel is back." Elijah says, "I'm not the troublemaker. You are. And you disobeyed the Lord's command and worshiping idols, Baal, and worshiping others." Okay. Other gods. Okay. So he gets King Ahab to summon all the Israelites and his Baal prophets. Yeah, because he put his own, Jezebel put her own prophets there that are not from God. They're just phony ones that tell them what they want to hear. And he said, "Bring all your Baal prophets up to Mount Carmel, and bring them up there, and let me try to convince them not to worship Baal, but to worship God the Lord, and I'll stop this drought." So let me just go up here and say another key event. Elijah defeats the prophets of Baal. Little sneak peek. So Elijah, I want to go over here to, hold on. Okay. I basically almost did this whole chapter in this book, even though it's all underlined over here because I don't write in this one. But this, because for some reason, this particular chapter was a little hard to go through. Not all of it, but parts of it. So I relied on this a lot this time. So Elijah, the passage marks a shift in 1 Kings. We will still be hearing the stories of the kings, but now also we will begin to find out about the prophets. First, we meet Elijah, a very important prophet and miracle worker. Elijah predicts famine. He stays with the widow and her son. God saves all of them from starvation with a bowl of flour that is always full and a jar of oil that never runs dry. Later, when the son dies, Elijah brings him back to life. Do these miracles remind you of anything Jesus did? Then God sends Elijah as a prophet to the evil king Ahab to show that the foreign god Baal is powerless. He challenges the prophets of Baal to a contest. They will both set up altars with wood and burn animal sacrifice. Then each will pray to their gods and light the fire. Of course, nothing happened with the altar of Baal. Elijah douses his wood with jars of water for dramatic effect. It's a drought. I don't know how he does that, but he does. When he prays, God sends down fire that burns everything, including the stones. Seems like that would get Ahab's attention, King Ahab, but unfortunately it doesn't. So that's what we're getting into. So after the fire, the Lord brought them. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they cried to the Lord. God, the Lord, He is God. The Lord is God. And Elijah said to them, "Seize the prophets of Baal." So he got them up there, and he did that with the altar. All this is about that. And he says, okay, grab them now. After he showed them that his Lord was God, he said, grab them, seize them, let not one of them escape. And they seized them, because when he brought up all of the prophets, he also brought all the people of Israel up there. So he had all the people of Israel to learn that God was his God and not Baal. And so he turned them. They woke up suddenly. And so they grabbed all the prophets, and he took them and killed them at the brook of Kishon. He killed them all there. A lot of killing going on. The drought ends. Okay. So Elijah tells King Ahab to go back and forth 7 times. In a little while, the heavens grew black, and there were great rains. And I think he was buying himself time with that, all that little story there. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he ran quickly, because all of a sudden there was all this water coming. And but the reason he ran was because he was fleeing from Jezebel. He knew that King Ahab was running to go and tell Jezebel. And so he's like, I got to get out of here. So King Ahab tells his wife Jezebel the drought was over by Elijah's God, and he killed all the prophets of Baal. He put them all to death. So he's the reason why there's no drought, and her prophets are all dead, because she's the one that brought these 400 prophets. So Jezebel sends a message. She's angry. She sends a message, and she says, may God strike me dead if by this time tomorrow I do not do the same thing you did to the prophets to you. Elijah was afraid, and he fled for his life. He took his servant and went to Beersheba in Judah. So Elijah walked a whole day, and he stopped and sat down in the shade of the tree. He wished he could die. It's too much, Lord. Take away my life. I might as well be dead. An angel touched him and told him to arise and eat. And at his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time and said, arise and eat again. This journey will be too great for you. And he arose and ate and drank and walked off the strength of that food for 40 days. What does that sound like? To Horeb, the mount, the God at the mount is the next one. So at the Mount of God. And then over here, I wanted to show you, and you see why I jump back and forth, because this clears it up quickly and easily. Okay, so, and now we get to meet King Ahab's wife, Queen Jezebel. She's just as evil as Ahab, maybe even worse. She threatens to kill Elijah. Elijah goes into hiding in the wilderness in fear. and despair. He is overwhelmed with the task before him and the situation he is in. He even prays that he will die. God has a different plan, though. Elijah is fed by an angel, witnessed an earthquake, a great wind and fire, but he doesn't see God in any of these dramatic events. Then, in a soft whisper, God speaks to him. Dear God, I want to hear your voice. I want it to be loud and dramatic, something I can't miss. But that's not the way God usually speaks to us. Help me to be patient and listen for you. In the quiet of my heart, help me to make time and space where I can hear the gentle whisper of your voice. Okay. So let's go back. And I'm just going to show you that. I just want to show you that prayer. I think it's good to teach to children. It's like the Saint Ignatius spiritual exercises. So, yeah. We're over here. Okay, so Elijah meets God at Mount Horeb. I feel like with this, the Lord knew he was exhausted, and he's trying to strengthen Elijah and give him some comfort and rest. And he's going to give him a little bit is what he wants. So he comes to a cave and he decides to sleep there. And the Lord spoke to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah is just like, I've been doing everything for you, Lord, and all they're trying to do is kill me. And the Lord said, go forth and stand up on the mountain before the Lord. And the Lord passed by with a great and strong wind and tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rock before the Lord. And after the earthquake, a fire, and after the fire, still a small voice. And Elijah heard it and wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he repeats what he said. I'm exhausted and they're just trying to kill me. The Lord said, go to Damascus and you will anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, and Nimshi you will appoint to be king over Israel. Elisha you shall anoint to be a prophet in your place. So, how about that? A little rest, huh? And those who escape from the sword of Hazael, Jehu will slay. And those who escape from Jehu, Elisha will slay. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So, he's gonna kill them all. Okay, so now this is Elisha, who we just heard from. Elisha, or we're about to hear from rather. This seems like it's further down. Okay, no, yeah. Elisha, I should be saying Elisha becomes Elijah's disciple. So he meets Elisha who's plowing, and he says, let me go kiss my father and my mother, and let me go kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you. They ate, and then he followed him and ministered to Elijah. So Elisha is a wealthy farmer who gives up everything to take over for Elijah, just like the call of the apostles in the Gospels. And the call in this story is one that Elisha answers almost immediately. It is hard to imagine that we might do if a messenger from God came to us in the middle of a school day and said, leave everything and come and follow me. God has work for you to do. Okay, maybe there are some things we would be happy to give up, like homework and chores, but it would be hard to leave everything behind, just as your favorite things, such as your favorite things and the people you love and care about. But God does ask us every day not to be attached to the things of this world. Every day we need to live as God wants and stay focused on God's will for us. God has called you through your baptism to speak his truth to the people you meet, and just like he called Elisha. I love that. Okay, so Now we're going to 20. So Ahab wars with the Syrians. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, took his army and 32 kings, horses, and chariots, and went up to besiege Samaria, and 32 kings, horses, chariots, and went up and besieged Samaria, and fought against it. And he sent messengers to King Ahab, the king of Israel, and said, all your silver and gold are mine, all your wives and children are mine. After some back and forth, excuse me, Ben-Hadad said something like, I will reduce your city to rubble. And King Ahab, because he's sounding cool, says, the real soldier does his bragging after the battle, not before it. I thought that was a pretty good line, though. And then they took their positions. Okay. A prophet speaks to Ahab. Meanwhile, a prophet speaks to King Ahab. Do not be afraid of them. You are outnumbered, but I will give you victory, and you will know I am the Lord. So, King Ahab defeats the Syrians despite their way outnumbered. It gives numbers like 7,000 against 127,000. Okay. So the Syrians are defeated, and the son of Israel, meaning Ahab, kill 100,000 Syrian foot soldiers in one day, and the rest fled, and then the wall fell upon 27,000 of those men that were left. But Ben-Hadad, the king, gets away, and his servants say to Ben-Hadad, the men of Israel are merciful. Maybe they will spare your life. So King Ahab is told, so he says, bring him to me, and they bring him. And Ben-Hadad asked him, please let me live, and I will restore the city that my father took from your father, and you can set up bazaars and commercial sale in Damascus like my father did in Samaria. And King Ahab said, okay. So they set these terms with him as a covenant, and he made a treaty with him and let him go. So he let him live out of greed. And then he didn't do what God told him. So a prophet commands Ahab. So at the Lord's command, a member of the group of prophets ordered a fellow prophet to hit him. But the prophet said no. He said, because you have disobeyed the Lord, a lion will kill you. And that's what happened. The prophet was eaten by a lion because he wouldn't do what the other prophet told him. Let me see. So the lion met him and killed him. Okay. So finally he went to another prophet and he said, hit me. And this man did. So it hit him hard and it hurt. And so the prophet bandaged his face to disguise himself. That's the reason he did it. He went and stood in the road waiting for the king of Israel to pass by. As King Ahab passed, he called out, I was fighting in a battle when a soldier brought me an enemy capture, and the enemy told me, if the man escapes, that I will pay with my life, or else I will pay a fine of up to 3,000 pieces of silver. But I got busy and he got away from me. The king said, you pronounced your own sentence, and you will have to pay the penalty, meaning death. The prophet tore off the cloth of his face, and the king recognized him as one of the prophets. And the prophet cried out, this is from the word of the Lord. Because you allowed a man to escape when I ordered killed, you will pay for it, because he let the other king live, because he promised him bazaars. So you will pay for it with your life, and your people would be destroyed for letting him escape. The king went back home. He was worried and depressed. Seems he has a depression thing, and then he has that crazy Jezebel wife that always gives him another harebrained idea. So Naboth's vineyard. near King Ahab's palace in Jezreel, there's a vineyard owned by a man named Naboth. So King Ahab said to him, "Let me have your vineyard. It is close to my palace. I want to use it for a vegetable garden, and I will give you a better vineyard for it, or I will pay you a fair price." Naboth said, "No, I inherited this from my ancestors, and the Lord forbids me that I should let you have it." So Ahab went home very depressed and angry. He laid on his bed facing the wall and would not eat. His wife Jezebel, like a child, Jezebel went to him and said, "Why are you depressed? Why won't you eat?" And he told her. She said, "So you're king of sorry. So she's like, "Okay, where is it?" She's like, "Okay, you're king. I will get you the vineyard." And she wrote some letters with King Ahab's name on them and sealed them. It was some kind of honor for Naboth, a pretense. And then she gets a couple of scoundrels to accuse him of cursing God and the king, and then take him out of the city and stone him to death. So that's what they do. And then King Ahab took possession of the vineyard. Okay? And then Eli pronounces God's sentence. And then the Lord told Eli to go to King Ahab and tell him, after murdering a man, you are taking over his property, as well as the very place that the dogs licked up Naboth's blood. Well, they will lick up your blood. King Ahab said, "Oh, have you caught up with me, my enemy?" Instead of listening to the dramatic thing he just told him, Elijah says, "Yes, I have. And you've devoted yourself to doing what is wrong in the Lord's sight. So the Lord says, I will bring disaster on you. I will do away with you, and I will get rid of every male of your family, young and old. You will become like the family of King Jeroboam and King Baasha, because you have stirred my anger in leading Israel to sin." And concerning Jezebel, the Lord said, "The dogs will eat her body in the city of Jezreel, and your relatives will be eaten by dogs and vultures." There was no one else who had devoted himself so completely in doing wrong in the Lord's sight as King Ahab. At all the urging of his wife Jezebel, he committed the most shameful sins by worshiping idols. When Elijah finished speaking, King Ahab tore off his clothes and put on his sackcloth. He refused food and slept in the sackcloth and went about gloomy and depressed. The Lord said to Elijah, "Have you noticed how King Ahab has humbled himself before me since he has done this? I will not bring disaster on him during his lifetime. It will be during his son's lifetime that I will bring disaster on King Ahab's family." 22. 1 Kings 22. Excuse me. Judah and Israel fight to join the Syrians. There was peace between Israel and Syria for the next 2 years. And the third year, King Jehoshaphat of Judah went to see King Ahab of Israel. King Ahab wants to get back Ramoth. Okay. And King Jehoshaphat says, "Yes, but first let's consult the Lord." I think we're over here. Did I go ahead? Oh, yeah. So inquire first to the Lord. So he says, King Jehoshaphat says, yes, but let's first consult the Lord. They call in 400 prophets, and they asked, should we go and attack Ramoth or not? And they said, yes, the Lord will give you victory. And then King Ahab said, but there's one more, Micah, but I hate him because he never has a good prophecy for me. And Jehoshaphat says, you shouldn't say that. So they send for Micah. And I like this because they set the tone of this meeting. And they say, they're sitting in their thrones and wearing the robe at the gate of Samaria. And I could just kind of see that. So, Micah's prophecy. Oops. Where are we? Micah's prophecy. Where are we? Okay. So, when he came back before them, they asked him, should we go and attack Micah? Wait, they asked him, should we go and attack? And Micah says, of course, you win. The Lord will give you victory. But King Ahab says, when you speak to me, in the name of the Lord, tell the truth. How many times do I have to tell you that? So he answers, and he says, I could see the army of Israel. This time he's telling the truth. I could see the army of Israel scattered over all the hills like sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, these men have no leader to go home. And to go home in peace. King Ahab turned to Jehoshaphat and said, I told you, it's always something bad. He never has something good for me. So Micah went on and he said, listen to what the Lord says. I saw the Lord sitting on a throne in heaven with all his angels standing beside him. And the Lord said, who will deceive King Ahab so that he will go and be killed at Ramoth? Some of the angels said one thing, another one said another, until a spirit stepped forward and approached the Lord and said, I will deceive him. And the Lord said, okay, how? And he said, I will go and make all of the Ahab prophets tell lies. The Lord said, go and deceive him. You will succeed. And Micah concluded, this is what happened. The Lord has made these prophets of yours lie. But he himself has decreed that you will meet with. Then the prophet Zedekiah went up to Micah and slapped him in the face and said, since when did the Spirit of the Lord leave me and speak to you? Micah said, you will find out when you go in some back room and hide. And then King Ahab ordered Micah to be thrown in prison and put on bread and water until he returned safely. If you return safely, Micah exclaimed, then the Lord has not spoken through me. And he added, listen everyone to what I have said. So, the defeat and death of Ahab. So they went to attack. And King Ahab went in disguise. The king of Syria ordered his 32 commanders to attack no one except the king of Israel. Okay. So when they saw King Jehoshaphat, they thought it was the king of Israel, and they turned to attack him. But then suddenly they realized he was not the king of Israel. By chance, however, a Syrian soldier shot an arrow, which struck the king in between the joints of his armor. And so he began to bleed, and they pulled him out of battle, and the blood was dripping from the bottom of his chariot. By the time that evening, he died, as the Lord said would happen. Everything King Ahab did is in the history of the kings of Israel in the Chronicles. So, then he went and laid with his fathers. And his son, first, Jehoshaphat The king of Jehoshaphat always did what was right in the sight of the Lord. He got rid of all the male and female prostitutes serving the pagan altars who were still left from the days of his father Asa before him. Jehoshaphat ruled Jerusalem for 25 years, and then his son Jehoram succeeded him as king when he died. Okay. And Ahasha reigns over Israel. So at King Ahab's death, his son Ahazi succeeded him as king. He went on to sin against the Lord, following the wicked example of his father, King Ahab, and his mother, Jezebel. He worshipped and served Baal, and arose the anger of the Lord God, Israel. This book reminds me of that ripple effect in the water minus the peace that's brought on by sin. So go look up Romans 7:13 to 7:25. So Romans 7:13 to 25. That's what I think of this book. Anyway, okay, we are done 1 Kings. So I will hopefully see you tomorrow. I will be starting with Kings 2. See ya.